There are 3 books I read this year that in a way blew my mind, really eye-opening books, and this is a compliment I don't often give. So for me to say that a book is mind-blowing is rare. So I wanted to make a video talking about these 3 books because they're incredible. And if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I love reading. In fact, if you go to my website, there's a list, like a ranking of my top 100 favorite books. Link in the description if you want to check that out. And I feel like in the channel, I haven't talked about books for a while, so I wanted to make this video. Just beware that these 3 books, they're all over the place. It's one book on spirituality, one book on business, and another one that I don't even know how I would classify it, but you will see. So honestly, I'm just gonna start with the best one. Screw this thing that you're supposed to do on YouTube of saving the best for last so that you can increase retention. Let's just get to the good stuff, okay? Let's skip to dessert. Number 1 thing I have read this year is a book by Jed McKenna titled Spiritual Enlightenment, The Damnedest Thing, or I don't know how to pronounce that word. It is by far some of the best stuff I have read in my entire life. Jed McKenna actually has a lot of books. I read many of them this year. They're all phenomenal. But if I had to pick one as a starting point, as a recommendation, it would be this one. Now, what is so special about this book? Why was it so mind-blowing? What does it teach? Look, the world of spirituality is filled with bullshit. So much bullshit. There's a lot of stupid fairy tales. There's a lot of delusion. And spirituality attracts a lot of weirdos and a lot of mentally ill people. In fact, something that a friend and I always say is that in the world of spirituality, or in communities devoted to spirituality, you will find the worst and the best people in the world. Like, that's how wide the spectrum of spirituality is. You will find the most dislikable and weird and off-putting and crazy people you have ever met, but you will also meet the smartest, most interesting and profound and well put together people you've met in your entire life. And one of the things this book by Jed McKenna does really well is pointing out and showing you very blatantly and very clearly what all this bullshit is and how you can identify. And it helps you to trim the fat from the world of spirituality and get rid of all that crap. And then it leaves you with the crumbs, the few pieces of truth that are actually valuable and true. And it does all of this with incredible storytelling and very simple yet precise language. In fact, the language is so clear and the words he uses are so simple that I'm sure that one of the problems this book suffers from is similar to the problem that I have with my website. Like, if you go to my website, I'll show you right here. If you go to my website, you will see that I wrote 4 free guides, whatever you want to call them, on the biggest things that I have achieved. So like one for health, on how I got like super ripped and jacked and stayed super healthy with incredible biomarkers. Then another one on wealth and business, on how I was able to build businesses that scale to 100K a month. Then another one on networking, relationships, reading people's personalities. And then another one, ironically, on spirituality, but in a way kind of like Jed McKenna, right? Without all the fluff, right? Without religion gurus or spiritual fluff. And I explain all of these for free with very simple language. But I've noticed that when I talk with people who've read it, many of them didn't fully grasp the ideas within it. And I also noticed the same thing happens when I read some of the reviews on Jed McKenna's book. Most people, when they read it, they think they get it because it's very easy to read, and obviously you can understand all the sentences and all the words that he uses. So it gives you the confidence like, oh yeah, I read it and I understood it, so I know what the book is about and what is the meaning behind what he's saying. But actually, I think a lot of people, they don't truly get the depth behind those simple words. It's one of those books that you really have to be there when you're reading it, okay? It might seem like a light read, but it's not. But here's the thing, there's something more important that I want to tell you about this book. But in order for me to explain this, I have to give you some context into something that happened to me a few years ago. So in 2021, I moved to Bali. I lived there for a couple of years. And there, I had the biggest psychedelic trip of my life. I posted a video a while back on the channel explaining that trip in detail. I'm not going to explain it here in this video. You can just go watch that if you're interested. But one of the things I experienced in that trip is something called Mahasunya. And I'm just going to read you the definition of what it is. Mahasunya represents the ultimate reality or the state of pure consciousness. It is described as the great void where all dualities, such as the seer and the seen, dissolve. This is not a state of nothingness, but a profound emptiness that is also a state of all possibilities, where consciousness exists without an object. This emptiness is not a void, but the very nature of reality. So basically I saw that for the first time in my life during that psychedelic trip. But then what started to happen is that 1 or 2 years later, after that trip, I started to encounter that void again, but without psychedelics. Just as I was going about my day, meditating, but just being aware of my own awareness, as I do when I'm going about my life. Like sometimes I would just be sitting or at the gym or walking on the street, and it would hit me, like I would see the void. And at first it was scary, and slowly I started to get used to it. But the thing is that back then I didn't know what it was. I didn't know about this thing called Mahasunya. And it started to happen more and more often, to the point that I was now experiencing it like every 2 or 3 days. And eventually I asked Antonio, that man I made a video about a few weeks ago, who I guess we could say it's one of my spiritual mentors or guides or buddies, whatever you want to call it. And he told me what it was. He put a name on it. I described to him those experiences in detail, a lot of detail, much more detail than what I'm giving in this video. And he told me that what I was describing was exactly, and it matched perfectly with what is Mahasunya. And then something interesting happened, because once he confirmed to me that this was a thing, like it's not like I was going crazy, but that this is actually a real state of consciousness, and actually a pretty high and elevated state of consciousness that you can reach. I asked Antonio with a lot of frustration, how come that with all the books I've read on spirituality and all the people that I've spoken to and all the research that I've done, why haven't I read about this before? And why isn't there just a book that plainly and simply explains this? And also another thing that really pissed me off, why all these books on spirituality only focus on talking about these things like lights and bliss and joy and love and all that, which like I have experienced those, but this void that I was encountering now seemed like a much deeper and raw and elevated level of truth. So I was frustrated and telling Antonio, like, why is the focus only like at the bottom? Like, why are we not truly talking about this thing at the top? Because in fact, something that Antonio told me is that those exact things that I was describing to him about this void that I was encountering were literally the exact definitions that Buddha himself gave about the true nature of reality. So then I was very frustrated, and I told Antonio, like, okay, so if this is the thing, if this is supposedly the highest or among the highest levels of truth, why are we not just focusing on this? And more importantly, where are all the books that talk about this? Where can I find more information on this subject that talks about it in very simple language? No riddles, no nothing. Not like the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads or whatever. Like sometimes these books can be very mysterious. So I asked Antonio, like, where can I find a book that just talks about this simply and plainly? And Antonio didn't have an answer for me. But then, funnily enough, 2 days after I asked Antonio for this, randomly, I don't even remember how, I stumbled across Jed McKenna. And I didn't know what his books were about, but for some reason I started to read them. I don't know why, but very quickly I was completely hooked and shocked, because he was literally describing very precisely all these things that I was and I had been experiencing and seeing in a lot of detail, with a lot of clarity, with such natural and simple language, very easy to understand. It was like, in a sense, I told a friend of mine this, it was in a sense like reading a biography of myself, or a biography of things that I had experienced and gone through. That's why I enjoyed it so much, because it was not like I was reading something that someone else had experienced but I hadn't, and I had to take their words for it. No, like what I was reading, I knew that this was true because I had seen it with my own eyes. And I was so hooked, so hooked. As I was telling you, like, there's many books that Jed McKenna wrote, and I've read quite a few of them. Not all of them, but probably I'm gonna end up reading all of them. But they're all incredible. They're all amazing. I have so many highlights from the books. If you want, maybe I could do a separate video in which I go over some of the paragraphs and the quotes that I have highlighted. But maybe I would do it, not on the YouTube channel, but maybe I'll make an exclusive video for the Telegram group. So if you're interested in that, join the Telegram group. It's completely free. Link in the description, and leave a comment like, hey, I would actually like to see that. So I might do it. But anyways, like, I could keep going on and on. Like, the book is incredible. All of his books are incredible. But I think you should just read it by yourself. So if you're interested in spirituality and you're smart and open-minded and you're not easily offended, you should read Jed McKenna. Now, the second book I read this year that was mind-blowing, and I absolutely loved it, is The Freedom Model for Addictions. In fact, it's pretty cool because I actually got to interview the authors of that book in this YouTube channel. I just reached out to them and I sent them an email, and they were willing to do an interview. It was super cool, super fun, very interesting. I would say one of my favorite interviews that I've done here on the channel. Not that I've done that many. Obviously, I've loved all the interviews that I've done, but this one especially, I really, really liked it. But anyways, like, look, this book, everyone should read it. Even if you don't have an addiction or an intense addiction. Because this book is not just about addictions. It's about why we do things that supposedly we don't want to do, but we do them anyways. All of us have like small habits or things that we do that we don't truly like, and we would like to change that, but we find ourselves just coming back and repeating the same patterns. And within this book, you can find many answers to that problem. And actually, you will find many more answers than in other famous books like Atomic Habits. This book, The Freedom Model for Addictions, is way better and way more helpful than Atomic Habits and all of these books. And you know, once we finished the interview with the authors, we kept talking for like another 20 or 30 minutes. And they did ask me like, why are you so interested in this book? It's mostly, for the most part, targeted to people with hardcore addictions, you know, like alcohol, drugs, heroin, that kind of stuff. And they told me like, yeah, you did mention in the interview that when you were younger, you did mention that, yeah, you spent too much time playing video games. But as far as we know, you don't have like a quote unquote addiction, you know, like to classic things like alcohol or heroin or whatever. And they even asked me like, is there anything else that we don't know? And I told him no, like, and this is exactly why, because the book is not just about addictions. The book will teach you and will show you why is it that you're choosing to do the things that you choose to do, whether you want to do them or not, whether they're good or bad, whether it's a big habit or a small habit, a good thing or a bad thing. It will really help you to see how you lie to yourself. And I think it can help some people to regain authority over yourself and to gain back control. So I would highly, 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 highly recommend every single one of you to read it. And lastly, third book that surprised me this year, it's One Too Many by Jason Flatlian. Jason is a guy who generated like $300 million online. He has worked with and consulted for some of the biggest companies in the world and the biggest brands, from companies like Zoom to brands like Alex Hormozy. He's really good at what he does. He has an incredible track record. And the reason why it surprised me is because it had been such a long time since I had read a good business book that actually taught me something new. I hadn't read a good business book that taught me new stuff for I don't know how many years, to be honest. I think I started to read business books when I was 17 years old, and I stopped reading business books I think around 22 years old. So since 22 up until now, I'm 28 years old now, I haven't read that many business or marketing books, except for like Alex Hormozy, maybe. So for me, reading this book by Jason Flatlian and actually liking it and enjoying it and learning new things was already in itself like shocking and very enjoyable. I mean, I liked it so much that I read the whole thing in like 3 days or 2 or 3 days, and I think it's like a 300-page book. The book presents itself as a book on webinars, but it's about so much more than just webinars, okay? It's about selling. So even if you don't do webinars for your business, you should 100% read it. It will help you improve your marketing, 100% your marketing, your sales, and overall your business. I also was able to interview Jason Flatlian a few weeks ago. I also posted that interview on the channel, so if you want to go watch it, it was a decent interview. Not as good, to be honest, as I would say, like, even though he might be in terms of like being recognizable, like the top one, no, actually top one, I would say it's Sam Backnin, but still, like, even though it's like pretty high up in terms of like reputation, I think it might be one of my weakest interviews, to be honest. But still, if you're interested, you can go check that out. Obviously, I talked about these 3 books. Obviously, I've read way more books than just 3, but these are 3 that I thought are an interesting highlight and could make a very interesting and a video with a lot of variety. Also, something that I just realized is that these 3 books, what they have in common is that there's much more to them than what it seems. So for example, with the book from Jason Flatlian, you would think like, oh, it's a book on webinars. Well, it's actually more than just webinars, right? The book on the freedom model, oh, it's a book on addictions. It's more than just addictions, right? And same thing with Jen McKenna, it's a book on spirituality. It's more than just spirituality. So something pretty cool that I just realized about these books. Anyways, if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. Just be aware that my channel is a little bit random. I have a pretty diverse channel. I post videos about anything and everything, about health, about business, about relationships, about spirituality, about things like this. Like, just go through my videos and you'll see exactly what I mean. But if you truly want to understand like what this whole thing is about, go to my website instead, because there's actually a meaning behind it all. And I would say that on my website, if you truly read it, and you truly understand it, I would say it's better, I think, than what I have on YouTube. Also, join the Telegram group if you're interested in meeting like-minded people who have like this polymath approach to life. It's free, link in the description, and that's it, okay? I'll see you in the next video. Take care, have a great life, peace.